Sir, weapons are locking. No one has fired. And yet a war almost began, because a memory was erased from the system. Heavy waves slam against the steel legs of the offshore oil rig. On the destroyer's radar screen, a string of code appears, something that was removed from the database back in 1987. Grey Widow requesting dark channel. The tactical officer stares at the display. Sir, that's not commercial traffic. The alarm sounds. The weapons control system begins locking onto its target, a civilian structure in the middle of the sea, now classified as a potential threat. Beneath those rusted steel beams, an old man in oil-stained maintenance coveralls remains bent over an aging electrical panel. He has no idea that a United States Navy destroyer is aiming directly at his position. Boarding team, prepare to deploy. The helicopter moves in through the sea fog. The order has been given. Power is tilting toward the trigger. The audience does not yet know who he is. They only know that a military decision is being activated, and if it is wrong, the cost will be far greater than an oil rig. If you believe that true honor does not live in gunfire, but in the silence of those who have walked through war, subscribe to Service Honor Stories, so that together we may preserve the memory, dignity, and reverence owed to our heroes. The oil rig stands almost forgotten in the middle of the sea. Rust eats deep into every joint. Loose bolts tremble under each hard gust of wind. The loud voices of workers from years past are gone. Only the dry, lonely clash of metal against metal remains. The old man continues working as if none of it concerns him. His maintenance coveralls are darkened by oil. His back is slightly bent. His movements are slow but never wasted. He speaks to no one. No one asks him anything. In the eyes of the remaining crew, he is simply an aging technician finishing his final contract before the structure is dismantled. The emergency beacon system suddenly emits abnormal interference. The signal light flickers out of rhythm. He does not rush. He does not panic. He kneels and opens the old control panel that has been with him for months. His fingers tremble faintly with age, yet each adjustment is astonishingly precise. He does not look at the manual. He does not need to. An unfamiliar frequency hums through his headset. Not an SOS, not commercial traffic, not any civilian signal ever heard in these waters. He stops. Just one beat. There is no panic in his eyes. No fear, no doubt. It is the look of a man who has heard this sound before in another room many years ago, when every decision could alter the fate of lives beyond the horizon. Again. He says it softly, not for anyone else to hear. Only to confirm to himself that the memory has never left. No one on the rig knows what he has just heard. They do not know that some frequencies are never taught in civilian technical schools. Some codes exist only in windowless rooms where young officers learn how to stay steady before pressing a button. He does not explain. He does not call anyone. He does not raise an alarm. He removes the headset and checks the circuitry again as if questioning whether he misheard. But he knows he did not. That sound is not merely a signal. It is a reminder. There were storm-dark nights at sea. There were storm-dark nights at sea. Control rooms washed in red light, urgent voices demanding target confirmation. And there was one moment, just one, when someone had to be clear-headed enough to say, wait. He closes his eyes for a second, then opens them. His breathing steadies. Somewhere else, younger men are seeing that signal and misunderstanding it. He knows this without looking at a radar screen. He understands how systems respond. He understands how fear can turn a signal into a threat. He straightens his back slightly, not to resist, but to prepare. The wind continues to whistle through the iron frame. Waves continue striking the rig's legs. The outside world remains unchanged, but within him something has awakened. He removes his gloves, sets them on the table, looks out at the sea. Once, he does not run. He does not seek shelter. He continues working, but each movement now carries intention. He knows that if he is wrong, this will be nothing more than a minor technical fault. But if he is right somewhere, a decision is approaching a point of no return. No one on the rig notices the shift within him. They see only an old man standing quietly by an electrical panel. But inside that quiet stands the experience of someone who has once stood between pulling the trigger and choosing to stop. Out at sea, the sound of a helicopter draws nearer. And when the rotor blades finally cut through the air above the rig, the silence comes to an end. Boots strike against the cold steel deck. No greeting, no introduction, only an order. Put your hands where I can see them. He complies slowly. No resistance, no explanation. The hands that once managed signal boards through violent nights at sea now rise like those of a man caught in the act. A soldier steps forward and grips his arm firmly. There is no hatred in their eyes, only vigilance and suspicion, the very instincts they have been trained to place above every other emotion. "Are you transmitting military code?" The young officer's voice is clear and controlled. He does not shout. He follows procedure. In front of him is not a former serviceman, just a 72-year-old man standing beside a malfunctioning control panel. The old man lifts his head and meets his gaze. No defiance, no fear. "You're about to make the same mistake." He does not raise his voice yet. The words thicken the air. A soldier behind tightens his grip on his rifle strap. The young officer frowns. The same as what the old man says, nothing more. He knows the more he speaks, the more he will be misunderstood. Some things can only be confirmed by those who stood in that room years ago, not by an officer simply doing his duty. Cuff him. The order is delivered cleanly. Cold metal closes around his wrists. The lock snaps with a dry click. It is a brief moment, but enough to redraw the line of status. From a man repairing circuitry, he becomes a suspect. On the destroyer, red letters flash across the CIC screen. Possible hostile relay node. One word is enough to elevate the threat level. Hostile. The officers in the control room do not know who he is. They see only an abnormal signal emanating from a civilian structure. They see risk. They see danger. They do not see memory. Alert level rises another notch. Protocol tightens. Every transmission is recorded. Every movement monitored. On the rig, he is pushed down into a metal chair. No one strikes him. No one insults him. But the suspicion in the eyes of the younger men weighs heavier than any spoken insult. "How long have you worked here?" "A few months." "What did you do before that?" He looks straight ahead. "Repair." The young officer is unsatisfied. He wants a clear background, a specific record, a reasonable explanation for the signal that pushed an entire destroyer into a heightened state. "Do you know what the Grey Widow code means?" He remains silent, not because he doesn't know, but because he knows too well. His silence unsettles them. In the military, silence can look like defiance. But for him, it is the only way to keep memory from being distorted by rushed words. A young soldier shakes his head. "You think you're smarter than us?" He does not react. He does not mention 1983. He does not mention the windowless room. He does not mention the moment a launch button was nearly pressed. In their eyes, he is only a maintenance worker who may have accidentally or deliberately accessed a military frequency, a vulnerability, a threat. In his eyes, the men cuffing him are not enemies. They are simply walking the path the system has trained them to walk. The young officer turns away and issues instructions over the radio. His voice does not tremble. He believes he is protecting the ship, protecting the country, protecting the men behind him. The humiliation does not come from the cuffs. It comes from no one recognizing what he is trying to prevent. He lowers his eyes to his wrists. The metal leaves red marks on his skin. He has seen deeper marks before, more painful ones. But this is different. This is the feeling of being misunderstood by the very people he once protected. A soldier asks quietly, "Do you have anything to say before we transfer you to the ship?" He looks out at the sea. The waves roll the same way they did years ago. "Don't rush." Just 2 words, no explanation. But to men who have never stood between pulling the trigger and choosing to wait, those 2 words sound like stubbornness. The alert level continues to climb. On the destroyer, higher-ranking officers are being notified. A chain of decisions is activating, each one built on the assumption that the signal is a threat. And he, sitting quietly amid cold steel and suspicious eyes, knows that the most dangerous thing is not a strange code. It is that no one remembers why that code once existed. And that very memory is about to take us back to another night when everything nearly slipped beyond control. 1983, North Atlantic. The sea was dark and cold as steel. Radar suddenly detected an unknown signal. High speed, direct approach. A bright streak appeared on the screen, heading straight toward the fleet. Possible inbound missile. The watch officer's voice was firm, emotionless. Inside the narrow control room, every eye locked onto the display. No one laughed. No one whispered. There was only the sound of breathing and the steady hum of electronic equipment. Confirmed target. No secondary confirmation. Time to impact. Under 2 minutes. 2 minutes could be enough to save a fleet. It could also be enough to start a war. A young officer stood beside the signal console. He did not have the authority to order a launch, but he was responsible for confirming the data. Sweat ran down his spine. His hand rested on the control panel. "We don't have IFF identification. Could be jamming. We can't wait too long." Voices overlapped. No one shouted. But the pressure tightened with every passing second. "Prepare to fire." The order was given. No one objected. It was procedure. The young officer stared at the flickering data stream. A minor inconsistency, a small deviation, almost insignificant, but enough to make him hesitate. "Wait. No one likes hearing that word when the clock is counting down. Explain. There's a possibility of false reflection from a secondary system. Are you certain?" "No." The silence lasted exactly one heartbeat. In the military, uncertainty is not a safe answer, but pressing a button while still in doubt is not courage either. "I recommend a verification hold code." "Which code?" He took a breath. "Grey Widow." The room fell silent. Grey Widow was not in standard training manuals. It was not a recognized protocol. It was a proposal, a final pause mechanism before activating firepower when the data was not fully clear. "Do you understand what that means?" "Yes, sir. We could lose our chance to respond, and we could fire on an ally." The words landed heavy as lead. The captain looked at the screen, then at the young officer. A decision not written in doctrine, a choice between speed and responsibility. Activate Grey Widow. The action sequence was halted, the launch procedure locked for several seconds. Just enough time to recheck secondary data sources. Signal reflection from Allied unit. No one exhaled loudly. No one patted shoulders. Only a quiet relief filled the room. If Grey Widow had not been proposed, a missile might have left its launcher, and an Allied unit might have become a target of its own fleet. After that incident, Grey Widow was kept as a final safeguard, not publicized, not widely distributed, reserved only for those who understood the cost of a wrong decision. The young officer never claimed he had saved anyone. He simply said, "We were lucky." But luck is not something you can rely on forever. A few months later, during another mission, one of the men from that night watch did not return. An accident at sea, not a missile, not war, but loss is still loss. At the brief memorial, no one mentioned Grey Widow. No one retold the near mistake. The survivors stood at attention in silence. From that day on, the code was no longer just a string of characters. It became an unspoken promise. If there was one more second to verify, they would take it. Years passed. Systems were upgraded, software replaced, younger officers trained under new procedures. Grey Widow gradually disappeared from official documentation, but it did not disappear from the memory of the man who once stood between life and irreversible error. And the young officer of 1983, after many years of service, eventually left the military in silence. No medal for the decision that prevented catastrophe. No newspaper mentioned his name. Only a memory that could not be erased. And that very memory now stands before a system that has forgotten why it once existed. The intelligence report is sent directly to the command center. "Sir, a foreign research vessel 18 nautical miles away has intercepted the same signal." No one asks for clarification. No one questions the accuracy. The data has already been confirmed. There are indications they are recording the entire frequency spectrum. The room falls into a heavy silence. The issue is no longer an old technician on an offshore platform. The issue now is the image of an entire nation. If the destroyer continues to maintain radar lock, the other side could accuse the United States of using a civilian structure as a covert military relay station. Such an accusation does not need to be entirely true. It only needs to be convincing enough to spread. Do we have evidence that he intentionally transmitted the signal? Not yet, sir. Any prior security record? Unknown. But the signal originated from his position. Yes, sir. A chain of decisions begins to form. Each option carries its own cost. If they fire, they may eliminate suspicion immediately. But if they are wrong, the mistake will be irreversible. If they withdraw, they must explain why the system reacted to a code that was removed from the database in 1987. Grey Widow does not exist in the current system. That's correct. Then why are we still recognizing it? No one answers right away. A technical officer studies the screen, scrolling through layers of legacy code. It's possible part of the old protocol was never fully removed. Possible. The word possible appears too many times for a moment like this. A young officer says quietly, If we release radar lock, they'll assume we're admitting fault. Another replies, if we hold lock too long, they'll claim we're threatening a civilian target. There is no simple answer. Admiral is en route. The information does not lighten the air. It only makes everyone more aware that the next decision will no longer rest solely with CIC. Maintain position. Do not fire without direct authorization. The order is given, but the tension does not ease. On the oil rig, the old man remains seated on the cold steel floor. The cuffs press into his wrists. A soldier stands nearby, maintaining measured distance. Do you have anything else to say? He shakes his head. He does not beg. He does not ask for a lawyer. He does not speak of 1983. He understands exactly how the mechanism behind these young men operates. In their eyes, he is a potential threat. In the system's eyes, he is an anomalous data point. In his eyes, everything is repeating along a familiar path. The radio crackles from the inspection team. They're reporting the research vessel has started adjusting its antenna array toward us. A soldier turns toward him as if expecting a confession. He simply looks out at the sea. The deepest humiliation is not the handcuffs. It is being seen as the cause of a crisis. Did you ever serve in the military? The question comes unexpectedly. He pauses for a beat. Yes. Where he does not answer. The young officer steps closer. Do you understand how serious this situation is? He looks directly at him. I do. Then why aren't you cooperating? I am cooperating. His voice is not raised, but it is steady. In the command center, senior officers begin discussing the possibility of manually purging the signal from the system, but doing so would mean admitting that part of the data was overlooked during modernization. We can't allow an outdated protocol to undermine current procedure. But what if that protocol once saved us? The quiet question receives no official reply. The pressure is no longer only military. It is about credibility, about perception, about whether an old memory has the right to interfere with a modern system. On the rig, the old man inhales slowly. He knows the decision coming will not affect only him. He has stood in a similar room before. He has heard similar questions, and he has once chosen to pause instead of rush forward. Now he is no longer the one who gives orders. He can only wait. And as the sound of a second helicopter approaches from offshore, the final authority begins to arrive. The sound of a second helicopter rises from offshore. No one says it aloud, but everyone understands the final decision has arrived. The rear admiral steps into the command center. He does not ask for lengthy explanations. He does not review the entire file. He requests the audio replay. Grey Widow requesting dark channel. He stands still as the words echo through the room. His eyes do not shift. There is only a deep, focused concentration. He turns to the watch officer. Do you know what Grey Widow means? Silence fills the space. A young officer answers quietly. Sir, it's a protocol that was removed. The rear admiral shakes his head. No. It's a code we wrote after we nearly killed our own. No one interrupts. No one challenges him. The officers begin to realize they are standing in the presence of a memory not found in any training manual. In 1983, he continues, we saw a signal just like this. And we almost pressed the button. His voice does not rise. He does not elaborate. He states a truth heavy enough on its own. Grey Widow means pause, verify, do not fire. A technical officer speaks up. Sir, if that code no longer exists in the system, then that's our failure. The answer cuts through every doubt. No blame shifted, no responsibility avoided. We are not permitted to forget why it once existed. He leaves the command center and heads down to the oil rig. No ceremony, no formal announcement. He sees the old man sitting on the cold steel floor, hands cuffed, back straight, eyes calm. They look at each other. No salute, no rank spoken. A silence stretches between them. The rear admiral asks quietly, You still remember? The old man replies, I never forgot. Nothing more is needed. The rear admiral turns to the boarding team. Stand down. A soldier hesitates for a moment. Sir, the signal, stand down. His voice is not loud, but it leaves no room for argument. The cuffs are removed. Metal falls away from the old man's wrists. On the destroyer, weapon systems unlock. Alerts drop level by level. The red warning text disappears from the screen. The tension drains from the command center like a tide pulling back from the rocks. A young officer stands at attention. Sir, how do we report this? The rear admiral looks at him. Report that we verified before we fired. He turns back to the man who has just been released. Thank you. The old man shakes his head slightly. Don't thank me. Keep the code. It is not a personal request. It is a reminder. A young soldier, the one who had held him down moments before, steps forward. I'm sorry, sir. The old man looks at him. You did your duty. There is no sarcasm, no bitterness, only the understanding of someone who once stood on the other side of command. The sea returns to quiet. No missile launch, no accusations, no diplomatic crisis. On the destroyer, sailors return to their stations. No cheers, no applause. But something has shifted. Now the audience understands the old man is not just a maintenance worker. He once stood at the edge of a decision that could have altered history. And today, he stood there again, not with rank, not with authority, but with memory. The rear admiral pauses for a moment before departing. We forgot too quickly, he says, softly, almost to himself. The old man looks out over the water. Don't make the next generation relearn the same lesson. No one writes that sentence into an official report. No one records it as formal doctrine, but it settles into the hearts of the young officers who witnessed it. And when the tension fades, what remains is not victory. It is the weight of responsibility and the cost of forgetting. There is no medal ceremony, no commendation before a formation of dress uniforms, no news broadcast mentions his name. The incident is handled the way sensitive matters often are, quietly and internally. A report is opened that very night, not to assign blame to an individual, but to trace a vulnerability. The modernization process removed a historical override code without a preservation mechanism. The sentence sits in the center of a blank page, brief yet heavy. No one argues. No one blames the software. No one dismisses it as just an outdated protocol. The rear admiral reads every page carefully. He does not delegate the signature. He takes the pen himself, pauses for a beat, then signs, formally acknowledging a system failure. A mid-level officer speaks up. Sir, this will raise questions about our upgrade procedures. The rear admiral replies, then we answer those questions. No avoidance, no minimization. He understands that the most dangerous thing is not the mistake. It is pretending it never existed. On the oil rig, the old man has long since had his cuffs removed. He does not leave immediately. He stands by the steel railing looking out over the gray water. A young officer approaches, the same one who ordered him restrained. Sir, the old man turns. I need to ask, why didn't you let us handle it on our own? The question carries no hostility, only confusion. The officer is trying to understand what he has just witnessed. The old man looks out at the sea before answering. Because silence is how a system fails the second time. The young officer says nothing. The old man does not lecture. He does not recount 1983. He does not speak of the near launch. He does not mention the shipmate who never returned. The officer asks again. But what if you were wrong? The old man replies. If I were wrong, you would still have time to correct it. If you were wrong, there might be no second chance. There is no arrogance in his voice, only the steadiness of someone who understands the cost of a decision. The young officer lowers his head slightly. I thought you were hiding something. The old man meets his eyes. You were doing your duty, and I was doing mine. There is no confrontation. Only two generations of servicemen standing on opposite sides of a system, realizing that responsibility is not always written in a manual. The young officer says quietly, We were never taught about Grey Widow. You don't need to learn the name, the old man replies. Just remember, there is always one more second to verify. It is not a technical instruction. It is a principle. Back in the command center, engineers begin reviewing every retired protocol in the archive. No one mocks the old codes anymore. No one treats memory as excess. The rear admiral departs without ceremony. He understands that the highest form of respect is sometimes not a medal, but correcting a mistake in silence. Before stepping onto the helicopter, he looks back at the old man once more. We will restore it. The old man nods. Don't restore it for me. For who then? For the ones who will have to decide next. The answer leaves the young officer standing beside them, quiet. There is no applause, no formation at attention, only a quiet shift beginning in internal documents. The old man returns to his aging control panel as though it has been nothing more than a routine day of work. He does not demand apology. He does not seek recognition. The lesson is not that he was right. The lesson is that he spoke when the system forgot something that once saved it. And that quiet correction is what remains after everyone else has left. 3 months later, a new document is issued within the Navy system. No press conference, no formal announcement, just a technical update distributed to operational units. Among hundreds of lines of procedure, one short line is added: Gray Widow, emergency verification hold before engagement. No extended explanation, no retelling of its origin, just a final pause mechanism before firing. A young officer reads that line and stops for a second. He remembers the silver-haired man on the oil rig. He remembers the words, "There is always one more second to verify." He says nothing. But from that day on, whenever he sees an abnormal signal, he will not only look at the screen, he will ask himself, "Have I verified enough?" On the oil rig, the old man returns to work as if nothing ever happened. He replaces wiring, tightens bolts, records measurements in his worn notebook. No news coverage, no articles of praise, no medals awarded. The workers around him only know that there was a military incident that day, and then it passed. A young worker asks, "You okay?" He answers, "I'm fine." Short as always. Offshore, a destroyer passes through the area. Far enough away. No radar lock, no helicopters circling, no alarms. Just a ship carrying out its mission. The old man watches it for a moment. He does not wave. He does not call out. He simply observes. Some things do not need to be spoken. Some forms of respect are shown by not repeating a mistake. In that ship's command center, a young watch officer sees the Gray Widow protocol listed in the system. He never lived through 1983. He never stood on the edge of life and irreversible consequence like those before him. But he knows the code exists because someone once chose responsibility over speed. "Do you know what Gray Widow is?" a colleague asks. He replies, "It's the reason we don't rush to fire." That answer is not written in any manual, but it is enough. The rear admiral who signed the update receives confirmation that the protocol has been integrated across the modern system. He reads the report and sets it down. No press call, no ceremony. He simply tells his aide, "Make sure it's never deleted again." On the oil rig, the old man closes his toolbox. His eyes are no longer tense like they were that night, but neither are they entirely relieved. He understands that legacy is not about being remembered by name. Legacy is about ensuring that something right continues after you are gone. A worker asks him, "What did you do before this?" He smiles faintly. "Repair. Repair what?" "Things that could cause mistakes." The man laughs, thinking it is just an old man's joke. But for him, it is the truth. He does not speak of 1983. He does not speak of the control room. He does not speak of the override code. He does not need to. Because somewhere out there, a protocol has been restored. And in the years ahead, there may be another young officer standing before a flashing screen. Perhaps he will see the words Gray Widow. Perhaps he will choose to wait one more second. Just 1 second. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon is not a missile. It is a forgotten memory. If this story makes you believe that honor and kindness never retire, press like, share this video, and subscribe to Service Honor Stories so that none of their memories are ever forgotten. Service Honor Stories. We remember the quiet heroes.